The chaos of New York City airport buzzed with energy, rushed footsteps, rolling luggage, and voices overlapping in every direction. But through the noise, one figure stood out, not by flash, but by presence. Snoop Dogg. No entourage, no spotlight, just a sleek backpack slung over his shoulder and that unmistakable calm. Some people glanced his way, but most rushed past, unaware. And that was just how Snoop liked it, moving easy, watching the world with a quiet smile. But someone did notice. Behind him stood Marcus Bennett, pressed suit, polished shoes, and a cologne that arrived before he did. Every movement screamed, "Look at me," and when his eyes landed on Snoop, a smirk. "First class, huh?" Marcus said, loud enough for people to hear. "Guess they let anyone up here these days." Snoop turned slightly, his expression easy, unreadable. "Yeah," he said, voice smooth. "World's full of surprises." Marcus chuckled. One of those laughs, the kind that wasn't a joke but a jab. "Peg you as the first-class type," he said, eyes glinting. "Pretty. Casual for this side of the plane." The line began to move. Snoop didn't break stride. "Comfort ain't about clothes," he said softly. "It's about how you carry yourself." But Marcus, he wasn't done. Inside the cabin, seat assignments told the real joke. Snoop, 1A. Marcus, 1B. Marcus's face twisted in disbelief. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered. "You, next to me?" Snoop eased into his seat with a smooth grin. "Looks like we're traveling together," he said, voice easy as ever. But for Marcus? It felt personal. He settled in, stiffly, his eyes flicking sideways. His polished shoes, Snoop's sneakers. His suit, Snoop's laid-back fit. Two worlds colliding in one row. And he didn't like it. The plane boarded. The air thickened, not from altitude, but from attitude. Marcus leaned over, his voice slick. "So? What do you do?" he asked, like the answer was a punchline. Snoop, adjusting his bag, replied simply, "I work in music." Marcus's brows lifted in mock surprise. "Oh, entertainment, huh?" He chuckled, leaning back. "Let me guess, small-time gigs?" Snoop's lips curled, but the smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Something like that," he said softly. Marcus, sensing an opening, went in deeper. "Funny, though. First class isn't really about luck," he said, swirling his champagne glass. "It's about belonging." Snoop's gaze met his. Calm, steady. "I think folks belong where they are," he replied. "And we both here, aren't we?" But Marcus couldn't let it rest. "You know," he said, voice laced with superiority, "money can buy you a seat, sure, but some places, they're more than just tickets." Snoop's eyes flicked to him, calm but sharp. "Some folks buy a seat," he said, voice low, "and some folks earn their place." The tension thickened. Around them, other passengers exchanged glances, subtle but watching. But Marcus, sipping his champagne, smirked like he'd won. "Guess we'll see who really belongs," he said smoothly. Snoop, leaning back, simply replied, "Yeah, I guess we will." The engines hummed and the flight climbed. But the tension between seats 1A and 1B was already sky-high. The flight attendant arrived with drinks, her smile polished and professional. Marcus, flashing his signature smirk, spoke first. "Champagne, the best you've got." The attendant nodded, pouring a glass with a crisp pop. Marcus lifted it with a smug grin, making sure Snoop saw. Then came Snoop's turn. His request, simple. "Just water, please." Marcus pounced. "Water?" he chuckled, swirling his flute. "Man, don't tell me you're wasting first class with just water." Snoop's reply was smooth, unfazed. "Sometimes. Simple's all you need. But Marcus wasn't letting it slide. Yeah, well, guess some people are just used to settling for less, he said with a smirk. Snoop paused, bottle in hand, then calmly, or maybe the best ain't always what you sip. But Marcus, still hungry for the upper hand, kept pressing. You know, he said, leaning back with his champagne, life's like first class. You work hard, you earn your spot, and then you enjoy it. But some people, he smirked, well, they're just lucky to be here. A flicker of something passed through Snoop's eyes. Calm, yes, but colder now. Thing about flights, Snoop said, his voice smooth but weighted. No matter where you sit, he tapped the armrest. We all land. Same place. The words hit, a sharp truth masked in smoothness, and the cabin felt it. Eyes flicked their way, subtle glances, little shifts. Because Marcus's arrogance was louder than his champagne glass, but Marcus wasn't reading the room. He chuckled, brushing off Snoop's words like they were beneath him. That's cute. Real philosophical, he grinned. But first class, it's about levels. Then he leaned in, voice low, coated in condescension. And you? You're playing out of yours. The air thickened, but Snoop didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled, slow, small, but sharp, like a blade, without ever needing to show the edge, and then calmly, Levels? Huh? He paused, eyes meeting Marcus's. Funny thing about levels, he said, voice smooth. They don't mean nothing if you can't see past them. And with that, Snoop turned. Conversation? Over. But the lesson? Just getting started, because Marcus thought he was winning. But the truth? He hadn't even realized he was losing. The plane cruised steady, but the tension in first class, rocky. The back and forth between Snoop and Marcus had drawn eyes. Passengers weren't just flying anymore, they were watching. But Marcus, he thought he was winning. The flight attendant returned, offering another round. Marcus lifted his glass with that signature smirk. Another champagne, he said, flashing a grin. Can't waste a first-class experience, right? Snoop, just a nod. Still good with water. But Marcus couldn't leave it alone. See, he said, leaning back with his refill. That's your problem. You're sitting here, but you're thinking small. Snoop's brow lifted slightly. That's so. Marcus, his voice dripping superiority. Look, life's like this cabin. He gestured around with his glass. You hustle, you grind, and you show it when you arrive. A beat, then. But let's be real. Some folks just don't belong in certain seats. The air shifted. Eyes flicked their way, whispered glances. Because Marcus had crossed something. But Snoop didn't snap, didn't rise. Instead, he leaned back. And with that easy voice, the one that cuts deeper than a shout, he said, You know, funny thing about seats. A pause, sharp, weighted. They don't care who's in 'em. But Marcus, too proud, too blind, doubled down. Yeah, he said, smirking. Maybe, but some people, they just borrow the spot. People like me, we own it. Snoop's eyes steady, and then just 4 words. You sure about that? But before Marcus could spit his comeback, a voice. The flight attendant back again, but this time with a message. Her tone, warm but pointed. Mr. Dogg, she said with a small smile. The captain sends his regards, and he wanted me to confirm. A pause. Just long enough. Your connection in Tokyo is all set. The name it landed harder than any comeback. because it didn't just say who he was, it said what Marcus didn't know. The ripple hit the cabin, a shift. Passengers exchanged glances, recognition dawning on faces, whispers rose. Wait, Snoop! Is that Snoop Dogg? But the best part? Snoop didn't change, didn't gloat, just turned slightly, calm as ever, and with the softest smile said, "Something wrong, Marcus?" And Marcus? His mouth opened, closed, then nothing. Because how do you come back from that? His confidence cracked, his smirk shattered, and in front of all those watching eyes, Marcus learned the seat wasn't the flex. The calm was, the tension thick, the whispers louder, but the loudest thing in the cabin was the silence from Marcus, because the name Snoop Dogg had landed harder than any punchline, and suddenly Marcus wasn't talking, but Snoop, still calm, and in that calm he cut deeper than any insult ever could. Marcus, his face tight, tried to recover. I didn't know who you were." But Snoop, his voice smooth as ever but firm underneath. "That's the thing, Marcus." He paused, eyes steady. "Why would that matter?" The question hit harder than anything Marcus expected, because it wasn't about Snoop's name, it was about Marcus's. Marcus, his voice thin, tried, "Look, I didn't mean—" But Snoop's hand lifted, calm but cutting. "Marcus," he said, his voice smooth but heavy, "you ain't gotta know a man to respect him." The cabin felt those words. Passengers who had seen every smirk, every jab, sat still. Because suddenly, the man with the loudest voice was the one who said the least. Snoop leaned back, his voice low but sharp. "You see, status?" He tapped his chest. "It don't buy character. And money?" He shook his head. "It only shows who you are. Louder." Marcus swallowed, and for the first time he didn't have a word to say. But Snoop wasn't done, because the real lesson was bigger than Marcus. "See? I ain't here to check you, Marcus," Snoop said, his voice smooth but solid. "I'm here to teach you." The cabin, silent, but everyone listening. Snoop's eyes steady. "Life's hard enough for everybody. So why waste your seat tearing down somebody else?" Marcus's head lowered, his voice small now. I was wrong." But Snoop, didn't let him off easy. "You ain't just wrong for me," he said, voice steady. "You was wrong for yourself. Because here's the truth. The biggest battles," Snoop said softly, "they ain't with other people. They're with you." Marcus's eyes shifted. The arrogance gone, and in its place, realization. The plane began its descent, but Marcus, he was already landing somewhere deeper. As they touched down, Marcus finally spoke. "I owe you an apology, not for who you are," his voice broke, "but for who I was." Snoop nodded, and with that easy voice, the one that teaches without shouting, he said, "Apology's cool." A pause. "But learning from it? That's better." The cabin doors opened. Passengers moved, some quick, some lingering, eyes still on Snoop and on Marcus. But Marcus stayed still, because his real journey was just starting. Snoop, heading off, paused at the door, and without turning back, left. One last line. Remember, Marcus, how you treat people says more than where you sit. And with that, Snoop was gone. But the lesson? That stayed with everyone. Because in first class, or anywhere, respect is the only upgrade that matters. So, what do you think? Was this a lesson in humility Marcus deserved, or do too many people judge the seat instead of the soul? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you felt this story, like, subscribe, and hit that bell, because the next one might just teach you something too.